The backyard was supposed to be safe until someone proved it wasn't. I'm the middle child of 3 boys. Both of my brothers were scouts. My older brother earned his Eagle Scout rank. My younger brother dropped out somewhere along the way. But for reasons I still don't fully understand, my parents never pushed me into scouting, which is strange because I remember being intensely jealous of my older brother whenever my mom would bring me along to his Pinewood Derby races and award ceremonies. The thing I envied most, though, were the camping trips. When the troop would head into the wilderness for an entire weekend, I'd tag along for the drive once or twice and watch them set up tents and build fires. But being too young and not a member, I was never allowed to stay. I'd always end up going home with my parents. My jealousy was focused mainly on my older brother because I watched him prepare for those trips. Before each one, he'd bring home a tent and practice setting it up in our backyard. I was maybe 7 or 8, but I remember clearly hatching this idea for my own backyard campout. We'd pitch the tent in the yard and sleep in it overnight. To my young mind, that was the most thrilling concept imaginable. Our backyard wasn't typical either. We lived in a spread-out neighborhood where properties blended into each other without many fences, just large patches of trees and undergrowth separating houses, which only added to the wilderness feel. Our yard was massive, and we had a fire pit, so our parents played along and lit it up so we could have the full experience. My little brother roasted marshmallows with us, but our parents weren't about to let him sleep in the tent. He was only 4, and that would have been a disaster. Once it got late, our parents brought him inside and told us to start settling down for sleep. This was back in the Game Boy SP era. After we crawled into our sleeping bags, my brother and I pulled out our handhelds and played our respective games. I was hooked on Super Mario Bros. 2, a game I could never quite beat as a kid. Eventually, I got tired enough to put it away and roll over, trying to drift off. But sleep wouldn't come. I was exhausted but restless, probably because I'd never slept in a sleeping bag before, and honestly, it wasn't comfortable. A long time passed, and I mean a long time, before I finally nodded off. When I woke, I was disoriented at first, not recognizing my surroundings. I looked around the dark tent and noticed something wrong. My brother was gone. His sleeping bag lay empty beside me. The tent zipper was still closed, though, so he must have gone inside the house because he couldn't sleep. Suddenly, I was too terrified to stay in the tent alone. I got up and unzipped the flap, but before crawling out, I peeked outside, too scared to just run through the yard without making sure nothing was out there. Something was. A figure sat by the fire pit in the darkness. It wasn't my brother. It was a grown man. He faced the tent, and there was no way he hadn't seen me. I gasped, yanked the zipper shut, and scrambled back into my sleeping bag as if that thin layer of fabric could protect me. I lay completely still. The tent was nearly pitch black, lit only by faint moonlight filtering through the nylon. I don't know what I was thinking at that moment, but I remember wanting to call out for my dad, hoping it was him, but knowing it wasn't. I'd gotten a brief look at the man, and if it had been my father, he would have acknowledged me poking my head out. Then I heard the chair by the fire pit shift. I was frozen, praying the man wouldn't stand up, and if he did, that he wouldn't come toward the tent. But a shadow appeared on the other side of the nylon, blocking some of the moonlight. He was right outside. I thought that if I stayed perfectly still, maybe he'd think the tent was empty. Then I heard the zipper, moving slowly downward, just a few inches. The opening was small, but it was enough. I couldn't help myself. I turned my head slightly. There's a tiny gap at the bottom of most tents where the zipper doesn't fully seal. I'd never noticed it before that night. An eye was pressed against that gap, one eye looking directly at me. I could see the white of it in the darkness. For a few seconds, I couldn't even scream. I was completely paralyzed. Then the eye squinted slightly, like the person was smiling in a way I couldn't see. The zipper moved another inch, and that's when I finally let out a scream. I thrashed backward, kicking free of my sleeping bag, knocking into the tent poles. Footsteps immediately pounded away through the yard.
Our back porch light flipped on, visible through the tent fabric. My dad burst out the back door shouting. I heard him running across the grass. By the time he reached the fire pit, whoever it was had vanished. We called the police, of course. I don't recall much after they talked to the officers. I know I ended up in my parents' room with my mom while the police did their search. It was a complete nightmare. I slept in their bed that night. I was traumatized for a long time afterward. Just when things started returning to normal, maybe a few weeks or a month later, the part that really seals this experience in my memory happened. I attended Catholic school, and during lunch we'd have recess in a fenced concrete yard. The far end bordered the street. We were playing some game, red light, green light maybe, and I had to run to the fence to be safe. While I stood there with a few other kids, a man on the other side said, "Hey." I turned. He asked for directions somewhere I can't even remember. I told him I didn't know and that we weren't supposed to talk to strangers. Then he said, "Your name's Chris, right?" That moment is burned into my brain. His voice, his expression, the way my heart dropped. I lied and said no. He smiled and said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I bolted toward a recess monitor and pointed at the fence, but the man was gone. One of the kids near me said he'd seen him too. The monitors called recess early, and the school contacted my parents. I was certain it was the man in our backyard. They pulled me out of school early that day. I know my parents were sick with worry. It was a hellish month. We lived in such a nice neighborhood. The idea that we might have to move because of this was terrifying. After months of close supervision, things eventually normalized, but I still get a knot in my chest thinking about how close I came to being taken. And it haunts me, wondering if that man ever succeeded with someone else.